Hello, I'm Voiding. Today I'm just going to be covering some basics about slimestone. Now, I already covered some of this in the Cubecast podcast with Speedcuber and TK, where they had me on and I discussed some things about slimestone. And I kind of went on about the basics of slimestone, and, I kind of rambled on and showed them a few things. A lot of basic things, but it wasn't really organized, and it was it was for a podcast, so we just kind of went with the flow, and I didn't really have a plan for it. So, what I want to do is I want to make like this one video where I go over all of this and explain, with a bit more planning. And partly because El Mango made a video about the basics of slimestone, or flying machines, and while I think he did a good job, I also think he didn't do a good job, if you know what I mean. And that's because he goes over a lot of important details, a lot of important things, but he doesn't cover that much, and he misses a lot of things that are just really important, and a lot of contraptions, a lot of like simple circuits that are used all the time in slimestone, which I want to cover in this series. Now, this is just going to be an episode about engines and extensions, and that's all I'm going to be dedicating this episode for, and next episode I'll do something else. So, engines and extensions. Let's start with engines first. This is a basic 6-block engine, but before we get to that, let's start with an older engine that was used a bit before we came to this. This was before observers existed. This right here is a pretty basic Caterpillar engine. I think it's called a Caterpillar engine. This isn't really used anymore because we have this now, but this works in one direction. So, how it works is, when I update this piston, what will happen is, because it is being quasi-powered by this redstone block, which basically means, a piston, when it's, hold on 1 second, I'm just gonna set this. When a piston is being quasi-powered by a redstone block, it means, it's being powered, but it's a little weird in the way that you need to update it, for it to realize that it's either being powered or not being powered. So if I place a piston next to it, it realizes there's no redstone block, so it depowers. But if I place a redstone block here, well, it's being powered right now, but it won't extend until I give it an update. And then it extends. When I remove this, I have to update it again for it to go back. So, with this engine, how this works is that this sticky piston realizes it's being quasi-powered by this redstone block once I give it an update. So now, if I tick freeze, I'm going to update the sticky piston, and I'm going to step it forward too. So first thing that happens is this sticky piston extends because it just got updated and realized it's being powered by this redstone block. And what's going to happen is it's going to extend, and then it's going to pull back. Now what's happening is this redstone block is powering both this sticky piston and this piston. And what it's going to do is it's going to now power this this piston. And because this piston just finished moving, it'll realize it'll get an update because it just finished moving. So because it got updated and it's being quasi-powered by this redstone block, it will now be updated. So if I step 2 ticks forward again, it will push forward. And now what happens is this is no longer being quasi-powered by this, and it will realize that, and it will retract. But we just pushed this piston over here, and now it's being quasi-powered by this redstone block, and as I said, when block finishes moving, it gets updated. So this block gets updated because it just finished moving, and it realizes it's being quasi-powered by this redstone block now. It wasn't before, but now it is because it got pushed forward. So now, this this regular piston is going to push forward. And now, what happens is this sticky piston gets updated by this piston, and it will push forward. And now, if I unfreeze, as you can see, the cycle repeats. This sticky piston pulls this forward, this pushes the entire thing forward, this piston gets updated, and this piston also updates the sticky piston, and that completes the entire loop. So this machine is able to automatically fly forward on its own. So if I delete that, now we can go on to this engine. Now, why do we use this engine? Well, it's better. And that's because it works in 2 directions, and it's also a bit cheaper. And it uses observers, and so it's a lot more versatile. I can put these observers powering the blocks like this. I can put it facing directly down, or you can have it quasi-powering. And basically what that means is, again, observers can quasi-power these pistons, kind of, by powering the air block above it, and that will actually update the piston. Unlike when you place a redstone block, you have to update it. If you have an observer doing that, it will update it automatically. And observers do something called short pulsing, and basically that means it will power something with a pulse of 2 game ticks, and short pulsing is 2 game ticks or less. So it could be 2 game ticks of a pulse, it could be a 1 game tick pulse, or it could be a 0 game tick pulse. 0 game tick pulse is when you pulse it, and it is when you turn something on and off in the same game tick. So a 2 game tick pulse is what the observer outputs, and that is actually enough to make a sticky piston, because normally, obviously when you have a sticky piston and you power it, it will pull back its block when you unpower it. Because it's such a short pulse, though, this 2 game tick pulse, it will actually spit out its block. And that's what the short pulsing will do. So, we have 2 segments here. We have, first, this segment of 3 blocks, sticky piston, an observer, and a slime block, and we have an identical segment on the other side, sticky piston, slime, and observer. And what will happen is, if I update one of these observers, it will, this sticky piston will be powered, and it will spit out this segment because it's being powered by an observer. Then this segment will update, again, because when you move something, it updates. And that includes observers. So if I wanted to move this observer, if I wanted to, like, power this piston by moving this observer, I can. So, obviously, when this is pushed forward, this observer will update, and it will power this piston. And then this piston will pull this segment back, and then this will update, and it will push it forward, and the cycle repeats. It's a pretty basic engine, and this is called a two-way 10 game tick engine, or 2 blocks per second. And that's because the game runs at 20 ticks per second. It only runs on 2 ticks per second if your server is garbage. But assuming your server is good and it's running at 20 ticks per second, then this will run at 2 blocks per second because it completes a cycle once every 10 game ticks. So it takes 4 game ticks for this observer to update and power this piston, and for this piston to complete extending. It takes 6 game ticks for this piston to extend and complete retracting. And then it repeats. So 2 game ticks are spent on this observer, pulsing. And 1 game tick is spent. Okay, let me rephrase this. 1 game tick is spent for this observer pulsing. Another game tick is spent. This observer is still pulsing. It's giving this a 2 tick pulse. And that 1 game tick is spent, like, updating this piston. So this piston gets updated in that game tick. And then the next 2 game ticks, this piston extends forward. Then 2 game tick is spent for this observer to power. Game tick is spent for this piston to update. And then 4 game ticks, 2 game ticks for it to extend and 2 game ticks for it to retract. So that's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. 2 times 5, which is 10. So it's a 10 game tick engine. I might have gotten a few details incorrect there, but that's just the basic gist of it. If I trigger you with my like fundamental misunderstanding of everything that happens in a game tick, I am sorry. Anyways, I don't care. That's basically the gist of how this works. It flies in 10 game ticks. I'm just going to show you it running, so that's exactly how it works. Now, I've been going into a lot of detail on these basic engines, and that's because I just want to explain how this works. So, as you can see, it can fly in 2 directions. Now, there are some cool things that you can do with this engine. For example, you can make it return automatically. So, if I have, like, a piston extended, and if you don't know, extended pistons cannot be moved. So if I try to push this, it won't move. So that means if I try to, like, update this, this flying machine won't start. And the reason why I put another observer up here facing up is because I'm going to show you how to make a return station. What this will do is once this flying machine reaches this area, or reaches this piston will get powered by this observer, and it'll extend, and it'll update this observer, which will power this piston, and that will have the right timing for the flying machine to reverse directions. So, as you can see here, that's exactly what happens. And it stops here because this cannot be pushed, obviously, as I mentioned before. And this is useful because you can use it to create delay. So if I want to power this piston, if I want to, like, start a signal by updating this observer, and I want, like, once I send that signal, I want this piston to power after a few seconds. Well, this is a good way of generating those few seconds of delay by waiting for this flying machine to return and power that piston. So this is a pretty common way of adding large amounts of delay without using extensions. Now, I'll get into what extensions are in a little bit. There's also another way of doing this, by the way. If I have, like, an observer facing here, and then another observer, like here. And what this will do is a similar return station. So this will also return it, but it will also move this forward 1 block. So if you have a machine like a quarry where there's a timer flying machine that moves forward, that is only activated once every time the entire thing moves forward, then there's no point in having like a extended piston. You could just use an observer which moves forward on its own. You don't need, like, a separate system to move forward a extended piston, which, in case you're curious, I'm just going to show you what that is now. If I want to move this extended piston, well, how am I going to do that? Well, you know, you may think the answer is tricky, because obviously you can't just directly push it, but if you use your brain a little bit, you'll realize that if you just move this block out of the way, well, now you can push it. And that's exactly what's happening here. This slime block will get pulled, and it will pull this, this segment consists of this slime block, this sticky piston, and this observer. This piston won't get pulled by the slime block because it's extended. So, once I pull this observer will update once it's done moving. It will pulse this sticky piston, and it'll pull this, this redstone block back. Actually, I put this in the wrong direction. There we go. Sorry about that. I realized that a little bit too late, but this will pull this back, and it'll pull back this redstone block, the slime, the sticky piston and the observer, and the observer will update when it's done moving. It'll pulse the sticky piston. Because this observer is moved out of the way, it's now here. This piston is not extended anymore, so this sticky piston is able to pull it back. As you can see. That's how you move an extended piston. Instead of having that circuit, you know, if it's moving forward every time anyways, you can just have an observer, and it'll just do that. Anyways, that's just a basic 10 game tick or 2 blocks per second engine, and a couple return stations that you can use with it. Now, you know, that's cool and all. I can make a thing that automatically flies, but how do I attach stuff to it? Well, that's a good question, because after all, the piston push limit is only 12 blocks. If I have 13 blocks, I won't be able to push this piston. But if I remove one, now I can. That's because the piston push limit is 12 blocks. If it's anything over 12 blocks, it won't be able to push. So that means I can only add a limited amount of stuff to this, because, and too much means this won't be able to push. So, how exactly do I circumvent that? Well, you can do it pretty easily by using something called an extension. An extension is basically just another piston attached to this segment. So, by using a piston, you can just have another piston that pushes or pulls another segment. That is called an extension. So now, what's going to happen is this is going to be pushed forward. This observer is going to be updated once this piston pushes it forward. And this observer gets updated, and it will power this piston. And this piston will, once it's pushed forward, is now here. So it'll push this segment forward, which will pull these 3 slime blocks, the sticky piston, and this observer. This observer will power the sticky piston once it's done moving, and this will pull this this section of 3 slime blocks. And to demonstrate this working, let's turn on the flying machine, and as you can see, this is way over the push limit. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. If this was all attached to one segment, this sticky piston wouldn't be able to move it. But because we have extensions, we can move it easily. Because we just simply have a different piston pushing it. So this piston isn't directly attached to it. But this is still able to move with the engine. And that's how extensions work. Now, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. You can obviously have a piston attached to this and have like an observer on the back, or attached to the front. You can quasi-power it. You could have it on the bottom, you know, and it'll work the same direction. Same for pulling. You can, you know, have the sticky piston like this. You can have the observer just directly behind it. You can have it attached to the slime. Again, quasi-powering it, or underneath it, or you can even have it in front. Now, you can't do it here, because if I have it like that, then this piston will just push this forward, this segment forward, and then this observer will just appear here. And when this is pushed forward, there's nothing to update this observer because it's not moving. So this will break the extension. So I can't do that. I have to do something like this. Or as I showed, I can do this, but then I have to move that forward a little bit. So this is a bit is a bit more compact. My keyboard had stopped working. There we go. So yeah, and this will also work because, but this will work because this moves first, and then this slime is pulled. So this observer moves first before, and it moves out of the way, so this slime isn't able to pull it. That's why this is able to be so compact. You can just have the observer right there. So yeah, you can attach way more blocks than 12 to a piston by just using more pistons. That's how an extension works. Now, you may be wondering, I've seen a bunch of flying machines, like quarries and tunnel bores, that move like a huge line of blocks, but it doesn't have the delay like you see here. Like these extensions clearly have delay. It takes time for it to work. So how in the world do I make like a huge line of blocks get moved instantly? That is something called instant extensions. Instant extensions are really useful because you can use them to move a segment of blocks as far as you want, as long as it's, you know, within the world border and is all loaded. If you have a bunch of it unloaded, then it won't move. So this is a basic instant extension. And the idea behind this is that when you move a redstone block out of the way of when it's next to a sticky piston, or any piston actually, if you push it out of the way, as soon as it starts pushing, the sticky piston, or the piston, gets updated as soon as it starts pushing. So as soon as it starts pushing, the piston will immediately start retracting. This is different when you're pushing it because it will only update once the redstone block is done pushing. So if I have this, like a sticky piston, and I push this, you can see that there's delay. But if I retract it, you see both of those pistons retracted at the exact same time. When I push it, there's delay. And that's how these instant extensions work. If by moving the redstone block that's already next to the piston and moving it out of the way, you can do crazy stuff like move this entire segment of blocks. This is really ugly, but don't worry about it. You can move it in an instant. You can pull all of that at once using multiple pistons, and that's how this works. This redstone block will be moved out of the way. This sticky piston will immediately be updated and it will immediately start retracting. Which means this segment will be also moving, and it will be moving at the same time as this. So if I have another one of these, you could make this 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 blocks this far out, have another sticky piston, and do the exact same thing. Now what is this? What is this piston doing? Well, this is to move this sticky piston after it's done pulling, because there's nothing to do it. It can't do it on its own, so I need a separate extension, there it is again, to move the sticky piston once it's done pulling. And that's what this piston does, and that's this observer powers it once this piston is done, the sticky piston is done pulling, because this observer will update once it's done moving. And you can have a bunch of these. So again, this segment is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and we can have another one. Just that we have to power this, to move the sticky piston every time. So this is a really long line of blocks. Actually, it's not really that long. I've seen longer, but this is definitely longer than everything I've built in this video so far. And this is going to all move. All of this will be moving at the same exact time once I update this. As you can see, it's instant. So all of these segments with the redstone blocks move at the same time. And that's how instant extensions work, by moving the redstone block out of the way when it's already powering a piston. It will instantly update that piston, and it will start retracting. And if it's a sticky piston, it will pull a segment back. That's how instant extensions work. So now that you know what engines and extensions and instant extensions and return stations are, I am going to show you a little bit of a bonus. This, what I'm about to build here, is a faster engine. And well, it is exactly what I said. It's like this engine, but faster. And it also only moves in one direction. This one moves in two, but this one only moves in one direction. This is a pretty basic 3.3 blocks per second, or 6 game tick engine. And how this works is, I'm going to set up an example here. If I have a segment like this, I have these pistons pushing this segment, being quasi-powered by these redstone blocks. Once this is done pushing, these pistons will be updated and they'll push. The difference is that there's a piston here. Well, what does this do? Well, let's find out. You saw that, right? I'm going to do that again, but with a slower tick rate. You saw that. So this sticky, or not a sticky piston, it's just a regular piston. This piston finished retracting before this one. And that's why this engine works, is because it uses these pistons on top of other pistons being, and these are getting updated by these are getting quasi-powered by redstone blocks, and because these are able to retract sooner, these extensions are also able to just move faster. You can complete a cycle much faster than just 10 game ticks like this one. For example, this is 6 game ticks. So just like here, you can have stuff like this. You can you can have extensions similar to what we had over there. We can move stuff around. We can attach stuff to this engine, so it's a functional engine. It works because we can attach stuff to it. As you can see, it moves a lot quicker than that one, and we're able to attach stuff to it using this technique of having a piston finish retracting earlier, so it can be pushed sooner. Because again, extended pistons and also moving pistons. So if the piston is currently in the state of pushing forward or retracting, it can't be moved either. So it has to be not moving at all, and not extended for it to be able to be moved. And if it takes too long for it to finish retracting, then it won't be able to move the next time. So the extension will just break. So that's why we need a faster way of getting this piston to finish retracting by having this piston on top of it. Now that begs a question. Well, can we have these instant extensions? Well, of course we can. I mean, come on. Of course we can have instant extensions. A good one that I found after a while of trying was this. And I'm sure this has been done before, but this is a pretty basic instant extension, so it works the same way. This redstone block is moved out of the way and is powering a sticky piston, so this sticky piston instantly updates and pulls this back. But this is where something new happens. We have to move the sticky piston, so we have to use these pistons. And this piston pushes it forward, and this piston updates this one, which causes it to retract faster. And that is, that allows this to be pulled again, 6 game ticks later, because it retracts fast enough. Without this piston, it wouldn't be able to retract fast enough, and this extension would break. So we have to have this system right here. What I have here can be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks wide. So the longer the extension, the more efficient it is. There's another one that works that I'm going to show here in a second. This one's less uglier, but this one is also shorter, so it doesn't work as... It's not as efficient as of an extension, but it looks a lot nicer in my opinion. And actually, this isn't going to work. I just realized I can't be bothered to remember it right now. This one's more efficient anyways, so you might as well be using this one. And yeah, basically you can have a chain of these, and it will work like an instant extension, but because these pistons are able to retract faster, they're able to be moved sooner. So you can have this be an instant extension that works at 6 game ticks, or 3.3 blocks per second, as you can see. So now this is moving at 3.3 blocks per second. So, anyways, yeah, that's it about slimestone basics. So today I covered engines and extensions and return stations. So I'll see you in the next episode, whatever that will be. See ya.